Hi everyone, it's Tracy here for Scrapbook Supplies Online, and today I'm going to do the first of a series of quick tip videos on working with chipboard. So the store sells a whole bunch of different wordlets and really cool shapes made out of chipboard, and they're made by this company. It's called ScrapFX, and I have a couple of wordlets here. I have one that says Disney World, and it's really nice chipboard. I don't know if you can see the detail of that, but every, you know, the points are very crisp and sharp, and it's just lovely chipboard, really detailed. And then here's another one. Look at the detail in that flower. Isn't that amazing? I almost don't want to cover these up, and that's a good point, is that these chipboard pieces are beautiful in and of themselves, and sometimes they'll look great even without covering them. But also, I know that some people are going to want to cover them to have a variety of different looks or to customize them to their project. So I'm going to be working with this Disney World one today for the layout that I'm working on. And there's so many different things that you can do with chipboard. You can paint it, you can mist it, you can ink it, you can stamp on it, you can cover them up with stickles, you can do all kinds of different things, and you can even do combinations of those things. Today, I want this Disney World wordlet to be black, and I want it to be shiny black, so I'm going to emboss it. So in order to do heat embossing, you need at least 3 tools. You need an embossing ink pad. I use Versamark, but there's a lot of different companies that make embossing ink pads. And it's just an ink pad, but it has glue instead of ink in it. Sorry, my light is a little too bright there. There you go. So it has a super sticky glue that just coats everything in a glossy, sticky glue. And then you need some embossing powder. So these are 3 different brands that I have in my collection. But there's lots of companies that make embossing powder as well. And then you do need a heat tool. And this is different than a hairdryer. A hairdryer will, A, it won't get hot enough, and B, it will blow too strong and blow your embossing powder right off of your item that you're trying to emboss. So you do need a heat tool. So optional things that you need, that you could use to make your life a little bit easier, is this is a little tray that just catches the extra embossing powder. So after you cover your item in ink and you're going to be sprinkling the embossing powder over it, this will catch it all, and then it's got this little hole and you can dump it right back into the container, so you don't waste all the leftovers. Another equally effective tool is just a plain piece of paper that's been folded in half. You can do your embossing over top of it and then just go like that and get the embossing powder right back into the container. And what I do with my embossing powders that I use often, like white, clear, and black, I just keep them in one of these, and then you'll see how I do that. Other optional tools, this is an embossing pen, and it has like a marker tip. There we go. And it's great for filling in any spots that the ink didn't pick up, especially if you're embossing something that's stamped. And then I like to keep a couple of paintbrushes, for really fine paintbrushes, for brushing some stray embossing powder. If you're doing stamping, you don't really need these when you're working with covering chipboard. So those are the tools. Now let's get started. I just dump it all into my own little Ziploc container. That way I can just pour it on and keep the mess inside of the container. So now what you want to do when you're embossing your chipboard is you just want to make sure that you cover the entire piece really well with your Versamark ink. So sometimes it makes sense to do part of it, and then you've got a part to hold on to. And that's exactly what I'm going to do with this one. So right now I'm just focusing on getting Disney covered. I'm getting a little bit of World as well, but I'm going to hold on to the World part when I do my embossing. So You see how that's just, I don't know if you can see the glaze on that. It just covers it in the glue from the ink pad. And now I'm just gonna coat it with a little bit of embossing powder. You just want to cover every little bit of it. There you go. And now I just need to grab my heat tool. And so now I'm just going to turn on my heat tool, and I'm going to hold this up so that you can see it. Excuse, it's going to be loud for a second. Okay, so I just turned off the volume here so that you wouldn't have to listen to that for 40 seconds. It takes a few minutes for the heat gun to warm up, but as soon as it does, you're going to notice the embossing powder starts to melt. So there it goes on the Y. It's really cool to see it kind of transform right before your eyes. This is one of the funnest techniques. Now, embossing powder is basically just a very fine powdered plastic, and so all the little tiny granules, I guess, of embossing powder are melting as you heat it, and they're just kind of forming a smooth surface. It looks really, really nice when it's done. So that doesn't take too long at all. Okay. So see how that gives it a nice, rich, black, glossy look? I love it. That's exactly what I had in mind, so I'm really pleased with how that turned out. This is gorgeous. What a nice piece of chipboard. Okay, so it doesn't take too long for that to cool, but you don't want to touch it while it's too warm because you might get a little fingerprint in it, but like right now, it's already cool. So there's a few parts that if I really wanted to, I could go back and emboss that again to get, like, put more embossing powder on it and melt it again to get it nice and smooth. You could also do 2 coats of it, but I really like the look of it with just the 1 coat. So now I'm going to go back and I'm going to emboss, get some embossing ink on the rest of it. And now when I go on this part where I got embossing powder on it and it hasn't quite melted yet, I'm going to get that on my ink pad. I don't really care, my ink pad is pretty grungy anyways, but if you've got a new ink pad, you'll want to just make sure that all of the embossing powder is embossed before you go back over it with another pad, with the pad again. And so the nice thing is that you can really tell when it's covered in glue because it actually changes color a little bit. So now I'm going to hang on to the part that's already embossed and just pour my embossing powder over it. And just dust off any extra. And now I'm going to emboss again. So now you'll see the embossing work on the bottom part of this chipboard element, and it's a lot quicker to get started the second time because my heat gun is already warmed up, so you'll notice that this one goes quite a bit faster. And the nice thing about this is that I've actually re-embossed the tiny little parts on the bottoms of the end that didn't come out right, so just when I inked it and dipped it, it covered that, and so I got a second chance to fix up those, although I did make another little mistake here. Okay. There you go, all done. And now there's just a little part down there that has a little nick because as I was looking in the viewfinder of the camera, my embossing gun hit that part right there. So I can do one of 2 things. I'll show you what I can do. I can heat it up and dip it right back in while it's still warm. So I can heat it up and just go like that and then re-emboss it like that. And now it's perfect. Oops. Isn't that gorgeous? I love that. So this has been the first in a series. I'm going to do another video next month, just a quick one, that shows you another idea for how you can cover chipboard. Thanks for watching, everybody.